atem nitzavim hayom, you are presenting yourselves this day. And vayelech means and he went. And that's because nitzavim is a moment of covenant ceremony, where all of the Israelites stand on the plains of Moab, which is the eastern shore of the Jordan River, and commit again to God's covenant before crossing into the land of Israel. Vayelech means and he went because Moses is leaving. Moses is departing this world. We're really nearing the end. Now, in Nitzavim, it's really interesting how complete and thorough the list of covenantal participants is. It says, your tribal heads, your elders, your officials, every householder in Israel, your children, your wives, even the stranger within your camp, from woodchopper to water drawer. And it's an interesting phrase that we don't see anywhere else in the 5 books of Moses, but we do see from woodchopper to water drawer in the book of Joshua. And so tomorrow morning at Torah study, we're going to look at what does this complete list mean, what's it saying about who's part of the covenantal community and who's not, and who are these wood choppers and who are these water drawers. So we'll do some cross-textual analysis for that. Now, the text says that even in that moment, perhaps someone in the crowd, perhaps one of you, is letting their heart stray and seeking other gods. It's very dramatic. And it says, you might imagine yourself immune and safe, but in fact, you are becoming a bad apple in the barrel. It doesn't quite use that language, but that's the essence of the text. And you'll be punished gravely. But what we learn from this is not just this idea of punishment and straying, but that our interior thoughts matter. We often, especially in this season, think about what are the deeds that we've done this year, and what are the ways in which we've hurt other people with our actions. But both in Avinu Malkeinu and in this Torah portion, we see that it also matters what we have thought and where our thoughts have traveled, and that we need to consider that as well. It's also notable that it says that one of the punishments mentioned for straying is that if a whole tribe strays, their land will be covered in sulfur and salt. And even in antiquity, it shows us that people knew what lands would make, or what chemicals would make a land non-arable, would make a land toxic. And this idea of total war, of total destruction that leaves a land unusable for its inhabitants, that is a very old concept and was always known to be a very harsh act to take. Then we also, though, get another act on forgiveness. After this very intense instruction on your land will be covered in sulfur and salt, your name will be erased, it says, now when Israelites inevitably stray, because you're human, then you will be brought back into the covenant, and God will love you as you turn back and you do tshuva. So there are a lot of layers of this parsha that feel very resonant right before Rosh Hashanah. Finally, we get to perhaps the most famous part of Parshat Nitzavim, which says, surely this commandment which I command you this day is not too extraordinary for you, nor is it beyond your reach. It is not in the heavens that you might say, who among us can go up to the heavens and get it for us and impart it to us that we may observe it? Neither is it beyond the sea that you might say, who among us can cross the sea and get it for us and impart it to us that we may observe it? Rather, the thing is very close to you, in your mouth and in your heart, to observe it. This passage is the central passage of one of the most famous Talmudic stories that starts with a debate about the kashrut of an oven, leads to rabbis getting so invested that they make rivers flow backwards and trees uproot themselves. And it ultimately comes back to this line, it is not in the heavens. It is up to us to be able to interpret and decide what the law means for us today. And it's so rich with meaning, that'll be the focus of my Josh tomorrow morning. Then we get Parshat Vayelech. They're both actually quite short parshiot. So now we transition in, and just like we did notably last week, we get the other instance in Deuteronomy of Moses being referred to in the third person, which makes sense because this is Moses' closing act. And it says, he said to them, I am now 120 years old. I can no longer come and go. That feels so relatable, right? It gets harder to come and go easily, to get back and forth the way we used to. And he also repeats his language about God will cross over before you. And no, Joshua will cross over before you, as God has said. And it also feels, you can feel Moses in his age, in his anxiety about this stage of his life. And before everyone, he calls Joshua over, and he gives Joshua some of the strength that he has had in his life to lead the people. And he says to Joshua, "Chazak ve'ematz," which has become a rallying cry in young Judea movements, in kind of the Jews who settled Israel and tilled the land. They would often say this, "Chazak ve'ematz," be strong and be brave. And that's what Moses says to Joshua as he sends him off to lead the people. And it says, then Moses wrote down the Torah and gave it to the priests and instructed them that every seventh year, every sabbatical year, the full Torah should be read in front of the whole community. Then Moses is brought into his tent, told by God twice that he'll die. And after the second one, it says, but you should write down this poem that's upon your lips because it will help bring your people back when they inevitably stray. That poem is Parshat Ha'azinu. It's an ancient text, probably precedes much of our biblical material. The language is tricky to translate, but beautiful and rich with imagery. And that's what we will read for our Parsha after Rosh Hashanah in 2 weeks. And that was my bat mitzvah portion, so it's close to my heart. So that's Parshat Nitzavim Vayelech. It's complicated. Heavy it's brought. Thank you. There's a lot to think about here, and I'll look forward to studying